from Delhi to Kolkata or Delhi to Mumbai, right? So we don't know कि raining is the only set of conditions under which John carries an umbrella, right? So कोई भी conditional statement of the nature if X then Y, the only inference that can be drawn is something known as the contrapositive, which basically goes like this. Ki if not Y, then not X, right? Or in other words, if John does not carry an umbrella, then we can definitely infer that it is not raining, right? Because the passage tells you that if it rains, he will carry an umbrella, right? So if he's not carrying an umbrella, then it is definitely not raining, right? So that's the logical reason why this relationship works, right? There is also a more formal logic-oriented reason as to why this idea works, right? So basically, ये जो if-then का relationship होता है, if x then y, right? Formal logic में this is represented through an implies sign, कि x implies y, right? Now, x implies y ka, there is a very specific truth table that goes like this, right? Ki when x is true and y is true, then the entire relationship or the entire expression is true, right? Ki true implies true is going to be true, right? When x is true but y is false, then the entire expression is going to be false, right? When x is false and y is either true or false, the entire expression will be true, right? The idea is if you start off with a false premise, you can pretty much prove anything you want, right? So false implies true is also true. False implies false is also true, right? Matlab, if you start off with the premise ki 0 is equal to 1, then you can pretty much prove anything that you want, right? You can prove that the earth is flat, or if you start off with the premise ki the earth is flat, so it does not matter what the remainder of your argument is, it will be true. Matlab, you cannot disprove it, right? If you consider the statement कि the earth is flat as true, तो उसके बाद कुछ भी justify कर सकते हो, right? So that is why false implies anything is considered true. If you start off with a false premise, then it does not matter what the other thing is, whether it's true or false, the entire expression will be true, right? So then the idea is कि x implies y का जो truth table होगा, right? So x and y का, it will be a 2 by 2 matrix. True, 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 false, false, true, and false, false, right? So x implies y का truth table would look something like this, कि true implies true will be true, true implies false will be false, and false implies anything will be true, right? अब यहां पे अगर हम नेगेशन ऑफ x implies negation of y वाला ट्रूथ टेबल ड्रॉ करते हैं, राइट, विच इज मेनली दिस थिंग, है ना, कि इफ इट डज नॉट रेन जॉन विल नॉट कैरी एन अम्ब्रेला, मतलब अगर x नहीं है तो y नहीं होगा, राइट? सो नेगेशन ऑफ x क्या होगा इफ यू वर टू ड्रॉ एन इमेजिनरी कॉलम? तो ट्रू का नेगेशन वुड बी फॉल्स, right? So these two will be false, these two will be true, right? Negation of y वाला column क्या होगा? True का negation will be false, false का negation will be true, true का negation will be false, and false का negation again will be true, right? So then negation of x implies negation of y, जो truth table होगा, will be false implies false, which will be true, false implies anything will be true, right? True implies false will be false, and true implies true will be true, right? So then the idea is that this truth table and this truth table are not identical, right? As you can see, one column is TFTT, another column is TFT. The two are not the same. So therefore, these two expressions are also not the same mathematically, right? And y implies x, again, it will be the same sort of thing. The truth tables will not be identical, right? So y implies x, now you're going this direction. true implies true will be true. False implies anything will be true. True implies false will be false. And again, false implies anything will be true. So again, this one and this one are not identical. So X implies Y ke basis pe, we cannot draw either this as a conclusion or inference or either this as an inference, right? And when you draw this contrapositive truth table, that is negation of Y implies negation of X, right? So negation of Y is basically this column, FT, FT, right? Negation of X is this one. So false implies anything will be true. True implies false will be false. Then again, false implies anything will be true. And true implies true will be true as well, right? So then this truth table, which is TFTT, and this truth table, which is again TFTT, these two are exactly the same, right? So X implies Y and negation of Y implies negation of X mathematically, formal logic wise, also have the same truth tables. So this is the mathematical reason as to why these two relationships are identical and why this and this are not equivalent or identical, right? Irrespective of however common sense oriented it looks like, if X then Y agar diya hua hai, we cannot conclude if not X then not Y, right? We can only conclude the contrapositive, which goes if not Y then not X, right? Another thing which you can also conclude is the property of transitivity, right? Ki if the passage tells you if X then Y and if Y then Z, then we can conclude if X then C, right? So it's almost like an addition in that way, right? Ki X plus, let's say X equals to Y and Y equals to C, then X is equal to C, right? So if X is the condition, Y is the effect. If Y is the condition, Z is the effect. So then we can conclude if X is the condition, then Z eventually will be the effect any which way. Clear on this? And this property also you can verify via a truth table. Again, it's the same sort of thing.
Can you just show this truth table thing again, if possible?
हाँ, truth table का basically मतलब है जैसे you might have studied logic kits either sometime in college or in high school. Basically logic kits क्या होता है कि expression का वो truth या falsehood determine करता है, right? कि जैसे for example x and y में the truth table would go like कि true and true is true, कि अगर दोनों चीज true है तभी the expression will be true, else it will be false, right? कि even if one of the two things is false, then the entire expression is false, right? कि अगर x false है तो पूरा expression false होगा, y false है पूरा expression false होगा, अगर दोनों false है तो पूरा expression फिर से false होगा, right? क्योंकि both things are combined.
जैसे लास्ट टू है तो मतलब अगर x is false and y is true, still it is true, वो कैसे होगा?
Oh,
मतलब
so
he did not
हाँ,
bring his it is not raining, still he carried his umbrella.
नहीं, not that way कि false implies true का वो मतलब नहीं है कि if it is not raining then he is carrying his umbrella. False implies true का मतलब है कि if you start off with a false premise, then you can pretty much prove any statement or any expression. That is the idea. कि if you start off with a true premise and you arrive at a true conclusion or you make a true statement, then the entire expression is true क्योंकि you have followed everything logically, right? If you start off with a true statement but arrive at a false conclusion, then the entire thing becomes false, right? False implies true या false का मतलब है कि if you start off with a false premise, then you can pretty much prove any single statement you want, right? मतलब if your premise or if the foundation of your argument is a false statement such as 0 is equal to 1 और the earth is flat, तो अगर वही से स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट है, राइट, तो अगर वो स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट है तब कुछ भी प्रूव कर सकते हो। मतलब अगर 0 इक्वल्स टू 1 को फाउंडेशन लेके आप चल रहे हो, मतलब विच यू कैनॉट ओपन टू डिबेट, देन उसके बाद you can pretty much prove anything you want. And therefore, whatever you prove will turn out to be true as a whole any which way.
So, can we take the summary of this as saying that, okay, we can only take the conditional statement both अगर इसमें दोनों true है फिर ही होना चाहिए, otherwise we should not assume कि अगर दोनों मतलब if it's one is incorrect तो दूसरा नहीं होगा ऐसे में।
हाँ, मतलब दिस इज जस्ट कि वो ट्रूथ टेबल वाला रूल कैसे काम करता है, दिस वाज जस्ट टू शो यू कि ये दोनों जो एक्सप्रेशंस है दे आर मैथमेटिकली आइडेंटिकल, राइट। तो मतलब बेसिकली आपका क्वेश्चन इस एक्सप्रेशन के फॉर्म में होगा, एंड देन द क्वेश्चन विल आस्क यू कि अगर ये आपका एक्सप्रेशन पैसेज में दिया हुआ है तो इसके बेसिस पे आप क्या इन्फरेंस ड्रॉ कर सकते हो। And then one of the incorrect options will be कि if not X, then not Y. The truth table exercise I mainly undertook to show you कि why these two statements are also not equivalent mathematically, right?
Got it.
Logically, why it's not equivalent is easy to understand. But of course, when you see the mathematical proof, then you will never forget it, basically.
Got it. Got it.
है ना? Similarly, truth tables में X and Y में as long as one of the two elements is false, the entire expression is false, right? And X or Y में, even if one is true, at least one of X and Y is true, then the entire thing is true. So X or Y is false only when both X and Y are false. Only when both are false. Right? क्योंकि और दिया हुआ है, राइट, कि दोनों में अगर एक भी करेक्ट है देन द एंटायर एक्सप्रेशन इज करेक्ट, एंड में बोथ हैव टू बी करेक्ट else the expression will be false, right? Clear on this?
Yes, sir.
Really. Now, there are several ways in which a conditional statement might be constructed in a question, right? The first is, of course, the simple way, which is if X, then Y, right? And this can also be written as if X comma Y without a then, right? And this can also be written as Y if X, correct? So basically what you want to do in these conditional statements or these conditional ideas is you want to convert them into this if then format and then identify कि X क्या है और Y क्या है and then identify कि कौन सा conclusion follow कर रहा है, right? The second construction जहाँ पे ये if then implied होगा is a statement of the form कि when X occurs, Y occurs. Or whenever X occurs, Y occurs. And of course, the occurs is in the brackets. Right? Again, these two statements can also be simplified to if X, then Y. Similarly, if you have got quantifiers such as all, any, each, or every, right? Ki all x's y or all x's are y's, right? Or any x's y or each x's y, so on and so forth, right? Or will be y or was y, for example, right? Again, these constructions can also be rephrased into the corresponding if then in the same format. Ki if x, then y, right? For example, when you have a statement like this, ki all apples are fruits, right? Or each apple is a fruit, right? And every apple is a fruit, so on and so forth. This could be constructed into a conditional where X will be apple, Y will be fruit. And then you can derive the conditional statement as if apple, then fruit, right? And therefore, what you can derive from this would be the contrapositive, which would go, if not fruit, then not apple either, right? Which also should make logical sense कि अगर कोई चीज फ्रूट नहीं है तो ऑफ कोर्स वो एप्पल भी नहीं हो सकता है क्योंकि एप्पल होने के लिए इफ इट्स एन एप्पल it has to be at least a fruit, right? Again, this is also a good way to show कि why the direct negation does not work. कि if something is not an apple, then it is not a fruit, right? Obviously, you can come up with a whole bunch of examples जहाँ पे ये hold नहीं करता है. The simplest would be, let's say, banana, orange, pomegranate, right? Those are not apples, but they are still fruits, correct? One important thing to be aware of when it comes to quantifiers is कि अगर all, any, each या every नहीं है, but instead you have got things like some or many or most, then you cannot draw the same conditional, right? कि if the statement is कि some X or is or are or will be or was or were Y, then we cannot say if X then Y, right? क्योंकि then there might be a few X's which are not Y's, right? And similarly, अगर जो verb है, if the verb is not a definitive verb, then also we cannot convert this into an if-then conditional, right? Then also we cannot derive a conditional. कि जैसे if the statement is कि all apples might be fruits, right? Then we cannot come up with the statement कि if apple then fruit, right? क्योंकि there is a chance कि all apples may also not be fruits, right? तो इस construction में the key ideas to note, A would be the quantifier. It has to be 100% or a 0% kind of thing, right? And the verb has to be definitive, right? Similarly, if the construction is of this form, कि no or none of X is Y, then this can be rewritten in this form कि if X then not Y. है ना कि अगर वो X है तो डेफिनेटली वो Y नहीं होगा क्योंकि none of X is Y, right? Again, the whole idea is कि you're looking to go from this statement into the corresponding if-then sort of conditional, right? Clear so far?
Yeah.
Yep.
So one question.
Please.
So when you say no slash none of X is Y, so won't that be negation of X then Y?
No. No X is Y का मतलब है कि अगर वो X है तो Y नहीं है. जैसे when I say कि no tomato is green or no tomato will be green, hypothetically, right? इसका मतलब क्या है कि अगर वो टोमेटो है तो इट विल नॉट बी ग्रीन. वी कैन नॉट से कि अगर टोमेटो नहीं है तब क्या होगा. बट
Okay.
अगर टोमेटो है तो इट विल डेफिनेटली नॉट बी ग्रीन, राइट? कि
Mhm.
जैसे नो कैट कैन फ्लाई, राइट? इसका क्या मतलब है कि अगर वो कैट है तो इट कैन नॉट फ्लाई, राइट? वी कैन नॉट स्टेट कि अगर वो कैट नहीं है तब क्या कर सकता है.
Okay. Got your point, sir.
Brilliant. तो यहाँ पे फिर then the corresponding contrapositive would be कि if y then not x, right? क्योंकि not y, negation of y, that is what it will change to, and then the negation and the negation would cancel each other out. तो मतलब इसका equivalent contrapositive होगा कि if y or if negation of y then negation of x, or negation and negation will cancel each other out, and therefore it will change to if y, then negation of x, right? In the no cat can fly wala example, the corresponding equivalent true statement will be if something can fly, it is not a cat because no cat can fly, right? Clear?
So
Abhinav?
this, yeah. So one question, this negation of, wait 1 second. So yeah, the framework is negation of y implies negation of x.
Perfect. If the conditional is ki if x, then y.
Yeah. So this won't hold true for the two cases, the verb definitive verb case and the some slash many part, but it will work with no slash none case, right?
Exactly, क्योंकि no slash none का मतलब है 0%, right? मतलब in a way in every case this does not apply. So उसमें भी वो every वाला idea implied है.
Okay, got it.
Some में you don't have that every वाला idea implied. Most में also you don't have the every वाला idea implied. No x is y में मतलब है कि every single case of x में y नहीं होगा. That is why it works.
Okay, so no is definitive and some many most is not definitive. Okay.
Exactly, क्योंकि some, many, most can mean anything between 1 and 100. No basically means 0, or none of means 0. All, any, each, every would mean 100.
Got it.
Similarly, whenever is pretty definitive कि जब भी x होगा y होगा, right? When is also pretty definitive कि जब x होगा तब y होगा, without exception basically, right? So that's the idea of if and then in such cases.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Sometimes an indefinite article, or even the definite article, namely the, right, can also be reframed as a conditional statement. When the indefinite slash definite article mean all or any or each or every, right? For example, when we have the statement कि an apple is a fruit, right? यहाँ पे an का basically मतलब है each, every or any, right? Again, the indefinite article can also mean or can also extend to 100% of the elements within the set, right? When we say an apple is a fruit, that basically means any apple is a fruit, right? The same also goes for the definite article in some cases, जैसे the horse is a mammal, right? यहाँ पे the का basically मतलब हो गया again any horse is a mammal, right? So जब definite article या indefinite article का same meaning है as all or any, right? When it means the same as that, then also we can paraphrase or reframe the sentence into an if-then conditional, right? But because the definite slash indefinite article can be used in a whole variety of conditions, when it does not mean the same as all or any, then we cannot, of course, convert or form a corresponding conditional, right? कि जैसे, for example, if we have the statement such as the following, कि a person will be invited to tomorrow's interview. This does not, of course, mean कि if somebody is a person, he or she will be invited to tomorrow's interview. क्योंकि यहाँ पे a का ये मतलब नहीं है कि any person will be invited to tomorrow's interview. Here, the indefinite article is talking about one very specific unknown person in the sentence, right? So depending upon which meaning of the indefinite article is being, or the definite article is used in the sentence, if it means the same as all or any, then a conditional can be derived, right? If it does not mean the same as all or any, then we cannot derive the corresponding conditional. Clear on this, everyone?
Yep.
Yep.
Now, certain other constructions which can be converted into the corresponding conditional. When you have got a statement like this, X or else Y, this can be reframed into a conditional कि if not X, then Y. मतलब अगर X नहीं होगा तो Y होगा, right? So this is what the corresponding if then conversion would look like, right? Similarly, when you have got an unless or until, it's the same sort of idea कि unless or until X, comma Y, right? Again, it converts in the same manner कि if not X, then Y, right? मतलब unless X, Y का basically मतलब हो गया कि जब तक अगर X नहीं होगा तो Y होगा, right? And finally, the last, well, not the last, but one of the last variations in which the conditional can be tested is a statement of this sort, right? Ki X as long as Y or X so long as Y, right? Iska corresponding conversion will be if Y then X, right? Ki matlab as long as Y hota hai to X hoga, right? Similarly, the statements X requires Y or X implies Y or X involves Y, all of these statements can also be converted into the corresponding conditional in pretty much the same manner कि if X then Y, right? क्योंकि अगर X होगा then that will involve, require or imply Y, again means the same construction कि अगर X है तो Y definitely है, right? Clear so far?
Yeah.
So irrespective of whichever construction is present, right? And these pretty much are the only constructions that will test your knowledge of the if then and what can be drawn or inferred on the basis of the conditional. The idea is to go from this into this, right? Ki if then ke format mein le aana hai, and then seeing ki what the contrapositive gives you, right? Jaise I'll write down the corresponding contrapositives here. Yes, this will be कि if not Y, then X, right? क्योंकि the negation and negation will cancel each other out, right? यहाँ पे the corresponding contrapositive will be if not X, then not Y. And यहाँ पे the corresponding contrapositive would be the same as the above. If not Y, then X, right? And one final idea with regard to an if-then statement, right? कि अगर कोई if-then conditional है, if-then conditional है, then it can also be converted into an only if statement, right? So if X then Y is equivalent to, this is equivalent to X only if Y, right? Only if sometimes a statement in a passage can use an only if instead of an if, right? So again, depending upon how the statement is constructed, the goal is to again simplify it into an if then, and then seeing which version of the conditional is applicable, right? Only if वाला जो idea है, we sometimes call it a necessary condition. The terminology is not too important. necessary condition का मतलब है कि something is necessary for the other thing to occur. Something is necessary for the other thing to occur, right? A necessary condition does not mean a sufficient condition, right? For example, X only if Y, this could be paraphrased as कि you will succeed only if you work hard, right? तो इसका बेसिकली मतलब है कि वर्किंग हार्ड इज नेसेसरी फॉर सक्सेस, राइट? इट डज नॉट मीन कि वर्किंग हार्ड इज सफिशिएंट टू सक्सीड, राइट? कि मतलब मे बी यू नीड अदर थिंग्स टू सक्सीड एज वेल, राइट? कि मे बी यू नीड लक, मे बी यू नीड मोटिवेशन, मे बी यू नीड कनेक्शंस, राइट? But working hard is definitely a necessary variable that is required, right? So again, hopefully you can see it through this example clearly. This can be converted into कि if you succeed, then you must have worked hard, right? क्योंकि working hard is necessary to succeed, right? So in other words, we can convert an only if into a corresponding if then, right? जो contrapositive का rule होता है, it only is applicable to an if then, right? So whether it's unless, until, or else, only if, or any of the quantifiers such as each, every, all, or as long as, or the word or the verb such as require, entail, involve, imply, right? All of these cases you want to convert into the corresponding if-then statement and then see कि कौन सा contrapositive apply होता है, या अगर दो या दो से ज्यादा conditional statements है, then perhaps the correct answer or the correct inference will involve some sort of transitivity. कि the two statements could be simplified to if x then y and if y then z, then the correct answer could be if x then z, right?
Sir, I have a question here.
Please, go ahead.
Sir, where you at the bottom right in the middle, you've mentioned if X then Y. Does that not mean Y only if X? Because X is the condition.
कि if x then y, does that
Yeah.
not mean कि y only if x? No,
Yeah.
it does not. क्योंकि y can occur irrespective of x. जैसे as we discussed कि if it rains, John will carry an umbrella, right? Does not mean कि John will carry an umbrella only if it rains.
Oh, got it, got it.
है ना?
Yeah, thank
है ना? But John carrying an umbrella is sort of like a necessary condition for raining, क्योंकि John has to carry an umbrella if it does rain.
Yeah.
है ना? कि similarly, working hard has to be a necessary condition for success, and therefore, if you succeed, then you must have worked hard. That's kind of the idea.
Got it, got it. Thank you.
But it's not necessary that you work hard only if you succeed. Maybe you work hard and you don't succeed. That is also possible.
Got it.
है ना? Similarly, it's not necessary that only if it rains, the y has to be, correct. Y can be correct independent of x.
Got it.
ओनली इफ, यहाँ पे ओनली का मतलब होता है वो मिनिमम वाला ओनली, राइट? क्यों ये
Yeah.
y जो है वो मिनिमम कंडीशन है x के होने के लिए, या अगर x होता है देन पेयर्ड मिनिमम, इसका ये मतलब है कि y डेफिनेटली हुआ होगा, राइट?
Yeah.
That's the sense of only in the only if, right?
Yeah.
Only does not mean कि खाली इसी कंडीशन में. So that is not the interpretation of only, but only in the sense of कि minimum this must have occurred, right? कि if you succeed, minimum you must have worked hard, right? It does not mean कि खाली work hard पे ही you will get success, right? But bare minimum you must have worked hard. So that is the meaning of the word only when it is used in an only if kind of construction.
Makes sense. Got it.
So when we are saying only if, does it mean X has occurred? It means Y would have definitely occurred. does not limit it to y, but y would
Mhm.
if x took place, right?
Correct. And that is why we can paraphrase it into कि if x then y.
All right, okay.
है ना, कि कोई भी if then है तो उसमें से if और then को हटा के of course the directionality is important in all of the if then, right? तो if then को हटा के आप इनके बीच में only if ऐड कर सकते हो। एंड सिमिलरली अगर only if है तो यहाँ से only if को हटा के you can add an if here and a then here।
Okay, got it.
Sir, one more question regarding this unless until. So, can we not say that in case of unless that if X is there, then not Y?
No, you cannot. So जैसे again, let's understand this with an example, right? Key. And let's use a different color. So let's say we have got this statement. Key, unless John works hard, he won't succeed. ठीक है?
Okay.
इसका अब क्या मतलब होगा? इसका मतलब होगा कि if John doesn't work hard, he won't succeed.
Correct.
Correct. And how does the unless and the if translation then work? He won't succeed remains the same, right? That is y and y wala part remains the same, correct? This changes into the negation when you convert it from an unless into an if, right? So then the x changes into the negation of x.
Okay.
है ना, मतलब unless John works hard he won't succeed को आपका जो आइडिया है कि if x then not y, so then that would mean कि if John works hard he will succeed. That is not something that we can state.
Okay. Okay.
है ना, for the same reason as कि this does not have to be the universe of conditions under which he doesn't succeed.
Got it.
है ना, कि if it rains John will carry an umbrella का ये मतलब नहीं है कि if it does not rain he will not carry an umbrella.
Okay. Okay.
Clear, Jairaj?
Yeah. Please.
Brilliant. Samya, was that concept clear regarding only if and the translation into an if then?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Any other questions? Anyone?
Excuse me, sir. Sir, the
Yes.
other version of only that we had just spoken of a while back, so only if X then Y, that will basically apply to unless X then Y, correct?
नहीं, unless को you treat it in this manner basically कि उसका if then ऐसा होगा. So basically the idea is कि चाहे कोई भी statement का या कोई भी construction का structure हो, unless हो, only if हो, or else हो, so long as हो, the idea is to convert it into an if then, and क्योंकि if then में you have those formulas which are applicable, those formulas aren't directly applicable to any of the other versions, right? So you convert from that into an if then, and then see ki which version is applicable. Now,
Okay.
in some cases, there might be an equivalence. If, you were to rewrite the if then, there might very well be an equivalence. But then that equivalence is purely, coincidental, for instance.
Okay.
But unless or until may, it still does not equate with or equate to only if, right? Ki x only if y will be rewritten as if x then y. And only if को अगर हम x के side shift करते हैं, मतलब y only if x, then this will be if y then x. So neither of these two is equivalent to the unless or until. Clear? All right.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Brilliant. Cool. Any other questions? Anyone? No? Okay. So let's have a look at some questions, right? In which these concepts can be tested on the critical reasoning section and even on the data insight section of the GMAT, right? So let's start off with this question, correct? So this is what we mean by an inference or draw the conclusion question type, right? The question skeleton will, and this question type we will explore in more detail as well in the coming session. But basically the question template will be if the above statements or if the above passage or if the above information is or are true, then what else can be inferred or asserted or concluded, that sort of question framing, right? Okay, so have a go at this question. Take a couple of minutes. Once you're done, type in your answers in the chat box, right? Once I've received a sufficient number of responses, we will discuss the question. Okay. Vinod, Ulrich, Apurva. Anyone else? Good. Most of you have got it correct, right? So B is indeed the correct idea, but let's see why, right? So this entire thing is basically a nest, almost, if you may, of as long as statements, right? And as long as can always be paraphrased in the form of conditionals, right? That is, it can be paraphrased into individual compartmentalized if-then statements, and then we can see what we can derive out of those if-then statements, right? Also, this is what typically a 90th percentile question would look like, right? This is from the official guide. But again, if the framework is clear, right, even 90th percentile questions can be solved pretty easily, right? So isme we have got three statements. So let's see how the conditionals translate. So we have got one analyst predict that blah, 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 Hong Kong can retain its capitalist ways after it becomes part of mainland China, as long as a capitalist Hong Kong is useful to China, right? तो जब भी conditionals दिया हुआ रहता है, always write down the x and the y and the if and the then, right? कि x के अंदर if जाएगा कि y के अंदर if जाएगा, right? मतलब is it of the form कि if y then x or if x then y. The directionality is extremely important, right? So here the corresponding if then would be कि if a capitalist Hong Kong is useful to China. I mean, this is all that you're looking to write down. You're not looking to write down full sentences, correct? Then that implies कि HK can retain its capitalist ways, right? After whatever, right? After it becomes part of blah, blah, blah in 1997, correct? So this is pretty much what the first statement corresponds to in the if-then context, right? The second statement is कि as long as HK is prosperous, that means if HK is prosperous, then it will be, then a capitalist HK is useful to China or will be useful to China. And the final conditional is that as long as it retains its capitalist ways, so if HK retains its capitalist ways, then that means HK will remain prosperous, right? And now let's use this to eliminate whatever options we can, right? Because there are three different conditional statements. You don't really know how to mix and match the different conditionals to arrive at the correct answer, right? I mean, the correct answer could look either one of these conditionals stated in some different wording, Or it could look like the contrapositive, and it could also be a transitive, right? Because you've got three different conditionals that are interrelated in some way, shape, or form, correct? Just say, for example, Hong Kong retaining its capitalist ways is the condition, but it's also the effect in the first statement, right? Similarly, Hong Kong remaining prosperous is the effect, but it's also the condition in the second statement, right? And the same goes for this and this in the first and the second statement, right? So let's look at option A. If HK fails to remain prosperous, right? So that is basically the contrapositive of the final statement, right? So we can infer if HK does not remain prosperous, then Hong Kong cannot retain its capitalist ways, right? And if Hong Kong cannot retain its capitalist ways from the first conditional, we can also infer that a capitalist Hong Kong is not useful to China, right? But we cannot infer that Hong Kong will no longer remain part of mainland China, right? Either you can infer that Hong Kong will not retain its capitalist ways, right? Or you can infer that the capitalist Hong Kong will not be useful to China, right? But you cannot infer that it will not remain part of mainland China, right? D can straight away be eliminated, right? Because all of this is part of a conditional, so we don't know for certain that HK will be prosperous after 1997. Similarly, whether Hong Kong citizens will have any restrictions placed on them by the Chinese government or something cannot be inferred as it's not part of any conditional or any consequence. Yeah. And similarly, economic crisis after 1997 hoga, though what the consequences will be is also not stated anywhere, right? So by elimination also, you're left with option B, right? जो भी shortest option से start with them first, see whether they can be eliminated. क्योंकि जो shortest options होंगे will often also be the easiest to eliminate, right? But also option B can be inferred in this manner, right? If HK retains its capitalist ways until 1997, the third conditional that is, then we can state that HK will remain prosperous, right? And the second conditional also has got that as the condition itself. Then the consequence will be that the Hong Kong will be useful to China, right? Which also is a conditional in the first statement. And then the effect of that will be what is stated in option B, that HK can retain its capitalist ways after it becomes part of mainland China in 1997, right? That is, if HK retains its capitalist ways till 1997, it can also retain its capitalist ways after 1997, which is what option B states, that it will be allowed to do so afterward, right? So here you did not have to take the contrapositive. Instead, it was just the property of transitivity that was tested. Ki if X then Y, if Y then Z, if Z then A. That sort of was the relationship between the three conditional statements. And the correct answer focused on if X then A sort of relationship.
So, like I arrived at B, but then my process was elimination. Said, okay, C may there's no, there's no mention of world economic crisis, so we cannot even say what will happen. D may, like, it will, there is no, we cannot conclude that Hong Kong will remain prosperous every year after 1997. There's no ways of arriving at that particular solution. Again, with E, we cannot say that there's no, like, citizens of Hong Kong and restrictions is not mentioned. It's just about how Hong Kong's financial status will be. And my way of elimination between A and B was it's saying that it will no longer remain a part. Now it's never saying that it will not remain a part as such as. So I just arrived by elimination that, okay, others are not looking good. Only B is looking good.
Correct. And absolutely, that is also, one of the ways to arrive at option B. And also option B, this is how you would justify through the three statements. But yes, I mean, that is absolutely a correct way to eliminate A, C, D, and E. Clear on this question, everyone? Yep. Great. Let's look at a slightly more difficult question, right? Again, another inference or draw the conclusion question. And this is of a slightly more difficult question category, right? But still, irrespective of the difficulty level of the question, again, once the frameworks are clear and once the variety of constructions within which a concept is tested is clear, then the solution is also pretty directly selectable as well, right? So let's have a look at this one. Again, it's a combination of if-then statements, one of which is stated pretty directly in an if-then direct embedding, another which you have to derive the corresponding if-then for. Okay, Jairaj. Okay, Sarvesh. No one else? Okay, Apurva. Okay, Abhinav. Good, Jairaj. Okay, Himant. Okay, Vinod. All right. So let's look at what's going on in this question, right? Cool. Okay, all right. So it says that because of the recent transformation of the market, right? Core Inc. must increase productivity 10% over the course of the next 2 years, or else it will certainly go bankrupt, right? So this is a statement of the form कि अगर X नहीं होगा तो Y होगा, right? In other words, we can reframe the first statement, at least partially, in an if-then conditional in this format. Ki if not 10% productivity increase over the next 2 years, then Core Inc. will certainly go bankrupt, right? And unfortunately, on the basis of this statement, we cannot infer something like option B, right? क्योंकि the first statement tells us कि अगर 10% productivity increase नहीं होगा तो it will go bankrupt, right? That, however, does not translate into कि अगर 10% increase होगा तो it will not go bankrupt, right? कि if it does not achieve that increase, that is sufficient for the company to go bankrupt, right? But the company might go bankrupt for other reasons as well. कि maybe there is a regulation change, or maybe the government decides to shut down the company, or maybe the government decides to raid the company, right? There could be other conditions also, or maybe the board members resign, right? Or maybe the board members come under debt, for example, right? So there could be a whole bunch of conditions under which it can go bankrupt. Not getting this productivity increase is sufficient for it to go bankrupt, but not the universe of conditions under which it will go bankrupt, right? So that is why option B, which is the most commonly selected option, right? क्योंकि the second conditional is pretty direct कि if 10% increase is not there, कि if not a 10% productivity increase, if 10% productivity increase, then also if this is possible, then a 20% increase is attainable, right? So then this statement could also be rewritten as कि if not 20% attainable, then Core Inc. will go bankrupt, right? क्योंकि of the transitivity loss, right? However, this does not follow, है ना? क्योंकि sufficient is not equal to the only condition under which something will take place, right? Similarly, D can also not be inferred क्योंकि a lot of this is just embedded within if then कि अगर ऐसा होगा तो ऐसा होगा, right? It's not stated with certainty that it will definitely achieve a productivity increase of 10% over the next 2 years, right? All we know is कि अगर नहीं करेगा तो it will go bankrupt, right? Maybe it will go bankrupt any which way at the end of the day, right? In which case we would state that it has not achieved this increase, right? So D, because it is so definitive and the entire conditional is probabilistic, D cannot be inferred, right? कि हमें नहीं पता है कि whether they will manage to achieve this 10% increase or not, right? Similarly, option C cannot be inferred, right? Because we know that because of the transformation, they had to or they have to increase productivity, right? But अगर transformation नहीं होता, maybe they would have still required to increase productivity, right? Again, the transformation is sufficient as a condition for the company to focus on increasing productivity. Does not mean that the transformation is the only reason as to why they have had to increase productivity, right? कि हो सकता है अगर market transformation नहीं होता, maybe they would have needed to increase productivity for some other reason कि maybe they were they would have gone into a loss of some sort, right? Or maybe the management decided to focus on greater productivity or greater profits or anything, right? So again, just because अगर X है तो Y occur करता है, does not mean कि only because of X, Y occurs or Y will occur, right? Y can occur independent of X as well. है ना? Sufficient does not mean the only condition under which Y will occur, right? And similarly, hopefully you can see that option A is also too strong, right? Kyunki we never know from the passage ki whether Core Inc. will survive the transformation in the market, right? Kyunki agar increase nahi hoga, तो it will go bankrupt, right? And all we know is ki 20% increase is attainable, does not mean ki they will attain a 20% increase without any doubts or any uncertainty, right? So whether they will ever survive the market transformation also cannot be stated, right? The only thing that can be stated on the basis of these two conditionals, right? So second conditional ke basis pe, what would be the contrapositive? Ki agar 20% increase attainable nahi hai, right? If not Y, then that would mean ki a 10% increase is not possible. If not Y, then not X, right? And then we know ki if not 10% increase possible is also the starting X in another if-then statement, namely the first if-then. Ki if 10% productivity is not possible over the next 2 years, then Core Inc. will certainly go bankrupt, right? So we can combine the original conditional and the contrapositive of the second conditional to arrive at option E, which would basically go कि अगर 20% increase attainable नहीं है for the company, then 10% productivity increase is also not possible for the company, right? And the original conditional tells you कि अगर 10% increase is not possible over the next 2 years, then it will certainly go bankrupt. मतलब अगर 20% attainable नहीं है, तो it must go bankrupt, right? Clear on this?
Yep.
Key, the second statement gives you, let's say if X then Y, right? The first statement tells you if not Y, then Z, let's say. Then we can also infer from this, ki if not Y, then not X, right? And then the statement any which ways tells you, ki, if not X, then Z, right? So then we can infer if not Y, then not X. If not X, then not then Z. Then that also means if not Y, then Z, because the transitivity rule applies, right? For 2 or more conditionals.
So one question, if B
Please.
may, it could also meet your like the example that we did in if not Y then X wala case, right? We cannot conclude that it will go bankrupt if this is not met.
क्या 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 एक बार फिर से repeat कीजिए.
So first of all, like I was confused between B and E, and I thought ki E is the better answer because B may it is mentioned that first of all there are two things is 20% increase over the next 2 years. Now the only case over here mentioned is 10%. Other condition is 10% is easily its increase is possible, 20% is attainable. So we don't need to say about 20% condition over anywhere.
No,
And
we
second,
can, but we can, क्योंकि if X then Y अगर है and if Y then Z अगर है, so you can make Z conditional on X. It does not have to be conditional on Y directly. क्योंकि Y is a consequence of X any which way.
but it is not saying that 20% is like is necessary. It's a condition for 10%. It is saying that 10% is possible and 20% is attainable. So it's not saying that if if Y then Z. It's just saying that if X is Y and it's providing another sub condition. It's not the like if Y is Z color condition.
Correct. So it is basically saying कि अगर 10% possible है, right? Then 20% is also attainable,
Right.
right?
So, matlab, for main condition, it is not saying ki we need 20%. For main condition, we need 10% only.
Exactly. For the main condition, you still need 10% itself, right?
Yeah.
Main condition में you don't have the 20% attainability.
Right. So, isme I chose that B is not making sense in that particular way. And other second thing is that it is also going into your negative fella thing. If it does not, if I'm not carrying an umbrella, doesn't mean that it's not going to rain wala thing.
Exactly. That's basically the idea, right? Ki, even if, let's say, option B said ki if it achieves a productivity increase of 10%, for example, B would still be incorrect क्योंकि अगर increase नहीं करेगा achieve तो it will go bankrupt. Does not mean कि अगर increase achieve किया तो it will not go bankrupt. That is, if it is not raining, does not mean कि I'm not carrying an umbrella.
Right.
Exactly, that is the idea conveyed in B. And therefore, if you look at the stats of how people answered for this question, you will see that option B is the second most commonly selected option, pretty much for the same reason. Ki anytime people see if X then Y, automatically they are tempted to select an option that says if not X, then not Y, right? And that is the trap that you want to avoid. A, for the logical reasons that we discussed, ki X is not necessarily the universe of conditions under which Y occurs, right? Y can be independent of X as well. And secondly, because of the formal logic truth table wala idea, ki if X then Y and if not X then not Y, the two truth tables are not identical.
One question.
Please.
So, for the B option to be correct, the logical inference should be that if this company did not go bankrupt, then it must have achieved 10% in productivity. Is that correct to say?
Yes. Ki the contrapositive of the first statement, if it did not go bankrupt, then it definitely must have implied कि X भी नहीं हुआ होगा. That is, they would have achieved a productivity increase of 10% over that 2-year period.
Right. So essentially, B option is just in the opposite direction. The condition is actually basically it's in the opposite direction, right? If it achieves productivity, it should be.
Very good. That is another way to look at it. कि अगर मान लो if यहाँ पे होता and then यहाँ पे होता and then some tense change as well कि if core did not go bankrupt or if core does not go bankrupt, then it would have achieved a productivity increase of 10%, then it would have been supported. Then it's basically the direct contrapositive of option B, which is why the directionality is important in an if-then setup.
Okay, got it, sir. Thanks.
Clear on this question, everyone?
So even if we change the sentence to the option B to core may not go bankrupt if it achieves a productivity increase of 20% over the next 2 years, even then it's correct, right?
So option B, you're saying Ulrich would read कि Core Inc. may not go bankrupt if it achieves a productivity increase of 10% or 20% over the next 2 years, right?
Yes.
Then also it would work. Exactly. क्योंकि if it achieves a 10% increase, we don't know what the outcome will be. Maybe it will go bankrupt, maybe it won't go bankrupt. Then also it would have been a valid statement. Or something like कि it is possible that Core Inc. will go bankrupt even if it achieves a productivity increase of 10% over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Got it.
क्योंकि then anything is possible, right? क्योंकि we don't know कि क्या होगा if it achieves 10% over the next 2 years. That is, if it doesn't rain, then we don't know what the outcome will be. Then it could be the case that John is carrying an umbrella. Equally, it could be the case that John does not carry an umbrella. So then you need a word such as could, may, might, is possible, that sort of wording.
Yeah.
But here, of course, every option is in the definitive, right? So that uncertainty is not present in any of the options. And usually, जो भी conditional statements होंगे, it will be pretty much a direct application of the formula that you're looking at to arrive at the correct option. Basically, अगर मान लो आपका just to put this on screen once we cleared the screen because we have a lot of stuff on screen कि अगर मान लो आपका passage बोल रहा है if x then y, usually the correct option will not be, usually the correct option won't say if not x then maybe or may not be y, right? Usually the correct option will be much more definitive than that. And it would basically say ki if not y, then not x. Pretty much a direct application of the contrapositive. और अगर एक दो और conditional दिया हुआ है, then what you get via a transitive relationship. Clear on this, Ulrich and others?
Yes, sir.
So conditional statements में it's pretty much a direct application of the formula that you're looking at. Which is why it's extremely important to understand how those different constructions or how those different structures can be reframed into an if-then, right? Let's look at a couple more. Yep. Let's look at a slightly easier question. Again, just a direct test of your ability to reframe the only if into an if-then, and then checking what we can derive on the basis of that x and y. Good, Apurva. Good, Ulrich. again, those who select option D, right? Note जो पहला condition है will translate into कि if people have serious financial problems, then they cannot be happy, right? On the basis of this, we cannot state कि if people are not happy, then they have serious financial problems. For the same reason कि if x then y दिया हुआ है, we cannot conclude if y then x. Exactly, Soumya, Himank, very good. Sarvesh, right? So this is what the first conditional is, right? If people have serious problems, right? Ki, then the implication is they cannot be happy, right? Then the last statement is an only if, correct? Ki, the construction is only if x, then y. Ki, only if the financial problems are solved, can they and those around them be happy, right? So this can be paraphrased to y only if x, right? Which in turn can be paraphrased to if y, then x, right? So y क्या है कि if they and those around them are happy, if people plus those around them are happy, then that means their financial problems are solved. Correct? And which option states this idea directly?
E.
D.
E. D में it's basically this idea कि first statement can be stated in this manner, right? Ki if people have serious financial problems, then they cannot be happy, right? They cannot be happy has to be the consequence, right? Of serious financial problems, है ना? तो then इस statement को we cannot paraphrase in this manner.
So this is similar to if you succeeded, you must have worked hard, right?
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
है ना? So what we can state from the second conditional is कि this only if x then y, right? This can be converted into an if then in this manner, right? Ki if people and those around them are happy, then that means ki financial problems have been solved, right? Which is what option E states the most directly, correct? Ki if people are happy, then it must mean ki they do not have serious financial problems, right? Again, option B you cannot state क्योंकि you don't know कि when they will be happy, right? Option B का if then basically होगा x will be y, right? Or all x will be y. तो option B का if then होगा कि if people solve their financial problems, that means they are happy, right? Again, if x then y के basis पे we cannot state कि if people do not have serious financial problems, they will be happy, right? All we know is if they have serious financial problems, they cannot be happy. We can also state if people are happy, then they do not have serious financial problems, but that is not what is being stated in option B, right? And that is why the directionality of the condition is extremely important. All x is y does not mean if y then x. It means if x then y, right? So अगर option B ऐसा बोलता कि if people are happy, that means they do not have any serious financial problems, right? Or even if it's stated कि happy people do not have serious financial problems, then option E would have been justifiable. As it is currently stated, it is not justifiable because it simply says कि if you do not have serious financial problems, then you are happy, right? That is, if it does not rain, then John does not carry an umbrella kind of statement.
Is B also between can and will? Because the last sentence says if only if their problems are solved, they can and those around them can be happy. And we will say that people who solve their problems will be happy. So it's like they can be and they will be happy. Is again a difference.
In this context, I would say can means the same as will.
Okay.
Right? Can also mean will in some conditions. Can indicate either a possibility or an ability, right? Just
Right.
when you make the statement ki my car can do 120 miles an hour, then that's not a possibility, it's more an ability of the car, right? So in certain contexts, can also mean the same as will. And here that is pretty much the context कि अगर उनके problems solved हो जाते financial problems, then they and those around them will be happy.
Okay.
है ना? So for example, मतलब अगर option B या C या D ऐसा बोलता कि happy people do not have any serious financial problems, then it would have been a valid inference, right? Then it's basically the contrapositive of the first statement, कि if somebody is happy, then he or she does not have any serious financial problems. तो again, if x then y अगर है तो उसका corresponding quantification वाला conversion जो होगा कि if apple then fruit का corresponding conversion होगा कि any apple is a fruit. The conversion will not be कि any fruit is an apple. That's the idea. Makes sense? Which is why we cannot infer option D. कि it's not the case that any fruit will be an apple, so it is not the case कि any unhappy person का मतलब है कि they have serious financial issues.
Sir, one question. Is it also not about, I mean, there is a difference between having a financial problem and being solved, and also not having any financial problem?
Well, but the argument is about serious financial problems, right?
Okay.
So then that's a very specific set of financial problems. I mean, if their financial problems are solved, that also means that they do not have serious financial problems. I mean, that's a pretty reasonable inference to draw.
Okay.
And so those two variables, Shairaj, can then be substituted for each other. मतलब अगर उनके financial दिक्कतें solve हो गई, then it also of course entails कि they do not have any serious financial problems. क्योंकि अगर serious financial problems होती, तो then their financial problems would not have been solved.
Okay. Okay.
So वहाँ पे there isn't probably as much of a difference, right? The main problem with each of B, C, and D is really with the directionality of the if-then, right? And C में, it's basically this idea कि the original sentence tells us if X then Y. C translates it into if not X then not Y.
I think between option B and also E is just the directionality, right?
Pretty much, just the directionality. Exactly. Clear on this question, everyone? कि again जब भी only if दिया हुआ है या unless, until, or else, as long as वो सब टाइप की चीजें दी हुई है, again you want to convert it into if then and then see what inferences we can derive on the basis of those conditions.
Sir, can you just repeat how we eliminated C? Because initially C and E sounded very much similar to me because एक बोल रहा है कि people who do not have serious problems, like so mainly the problem is stating that if SF then not happy. So this is what the problem is stating, and C and E seem very similar to me as such.
हाँ, बेसिकली यू डोंट नो कि अगर सीरियस फाइनेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स नहीं है तो क्या होगा, राइट? वी नो कि अगर सीरियस फाइनेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स है फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट,
then they will not be happy.
देन दे कैन नॉट बी हैप्पी, राइट? मतलब अगर एक्स है तो दे वोंट बी हैप्पी, राइट? अब अगर एक्स नहीं है तो what the situation will be, we don't know, right?
But then E
Maybe
is also on the like I chose E only, but E is also on the similar lines only. Like people are happy, they do not have serious problems. So over
no,
here, we do know that we are talking only about the subset of people who do not have like serious financial problems.
no, we are not. That's the difference. We are talking about the subset of people who are happy.
Happy.
That's the
Okay.
difference. Because then you can definitely state कि अगर कोई खुश है, then they definitely do not have serious issues, क्योंकि the problem statement tells you कि अगर serious financial issues है, they cannot be happy,
Right.
है ना? So the subsetting is not with regard to people having serious financial problems. The subsetting is with regard to whether they're happy vis-a-vis not happy. Clear, Apurva?
Yes, I got it.
Ready. तो ये conditional statements में जो भी incorrect options होंगे will pretty much mainly be in terms of the directionality really, right? And the negation, कि the statement will tell you if X then Y. The incorrect option will tell you if not X then not Y, right? Again, sufficient does not mean कि the only condition under which Y will occur, right? Cool. And now let's finish off with one two-part analysis question type from the official guide, right? So this is what a two-part analysis question will look like in the DI section, right? You will have two columns, and you'll have to make one selection per column, right? And again, it does not really matter which question type we sort of look at, right? Whether it's a DI question type or a verbal question type, it's really the concept that you are really interested in. Kyunki a lot of the DI question types will just be application of critical reasoning, reading comprehension, or the CR frameworks or mathematical frameworks, right? So in all of these classes, not only will we look strictly at, precise or strict CR/RC questions, we will also switch a little bit to the DI questions as well, right? क्योंकि again DI questions में नया कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, it's just a different question type with the same underlying concepts, right? So have a go at this one. Again, it's an application of those ideas that we discussed with regard to if, then, and what the corresponding relationships would be, right? And this is the last question that we will look at today. Also, for a two-part analysis question, the two options that you select for a given column, they can also be the same option, right? तो ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है कि the two options have to be different or anything like that. Most of the time they will be different, but it's not necessary that they will be different. Very good, Samya. Ulrich, not quite. Second one is okay, not the first one. Very good, Apurva. First one is correct, Abhinav, not the second one. Good, Kajal. Very good. Jairaj, second part is correct, not the first one. Okay, so the second part is reasonably straightforward, right? It says कि regardless of X, it is always permissible to ask the ethic boards to review the action for conformity, right? So then basically the idea is कि regardless of X, Y, this can just be simplified to Y, right? कि X हो चाहे नहीं हो, Y होता है, मतलब it's just a more expanded way or a more elongated way of saying Y, right? So then one is permitted to ask the ethic boards to review for an action independent of X, right? That's sort of what we are looking for, right? Ki Y will be true irrespective of X, right? The closest option to irrespective of or independent of would be whether or not, right? Ki chahe X ho, chahe na ho, Y will still occur, right? So for the second option, it's definitely whether or not, right? The first option, again, is still pretty straightforward and in line with what we have discussed, right? So the first statement says that all actions that are permissible are also legal in blah, 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 right? In other words, it states that all X is Y, correct? This can be reframed into if X then Y, right? In other words, it can be paraphrased to if permissible under blah, 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 under let's say COE, then that implies that it is also legal in the different jurisdictions, right? Now the question states that without exception, an action that is permissible under the code of ethics, matlab X, and it is legal in all of the jurisdiction, which is Y, right? So basically the question is कि if X then Y का relationship अगर है, which structure when inserted between X and Y would maintain the equivalency of that relationship, right? And you can also eliminate, right? It cannot be if, क्योंकि if X then Y and X if Y are completely different, right? It also cannot be unless, क्योंकि unless के साथ हमने देखा था how the if transition or translation works, right? And of course it cannot be or, क्योंकि then there is no conditional at all, correct? So if x then y is also equivalent to the final relationship that we discussed, which is this idea of only if, right? कि कोई भी if then को we can convert into an only if, right? Ki only if you work hard will you succeed, and this can be translated into an if then ki if you succeed, then that must mean ki you would have worked hard, right? And this question, the first blank, is pretty much just a direct question testing you on that idea, right? And again, as you can see, this is a question which has only got 35% of the test takers attempting it correctly, right? And this is an official guide question, right? But again, if you are clear with your frameworks and with the understanding of the conditional statements, if only if, yeah, if unless, yeah, if as long as, and all those other ideas कि वो if then में कैसे translate होते हैं, and then what can be derived on the basis of those statements, then this question would hardly take you 2 minutes, right? क्योंकि there is no difference in the variables, कोई negate नहीं किया गया है variable को or anything like that, right? Basically, if then को उसके equivalent relationship में हमें apply करना है.
So just a question, is it common that, or is it like some type of rule that your first thing will always relate to the first sentence, the second one will relate to second sentence, or is it just a coincidence?
It's not necessary. Logically, you'd expect it to relate to the first statement. I mean, if it's a two-part analysis question type or a multi-source reasoning question type, although it's not necessary. Matlab, it can be the other way around as well. Ki sometimes both blanks might relate to just the last conditional, right? And it might not even take the first conditional into account. ऐसा भी हो सकता है.
Got it.
Or both blanks might only take the first conditional into account without the remainder of the conditionals. So no, it's not mandatory. Clear on this question, everyone?
Yes.
Brilliant. So let's keep it at that then for tonight, right?